Hey guys, welcome to UnVEXed. This is our first episode here to get you guys talking about VEX Robotics and a little bit about myself very quickly. I consider myself to be like a VEX Robotics farmer, planting seeds, helping coaches, doing what we can. And that's what this episode is going to be about. How can we help you guys? Now, this show is about VEX Robotics, the greatest 2 minutes in robotics. And we have a whole bunch of peoples gathered together in this episode that are super passionate about VEX Robotics. Another way to say that is that they have a whole closet filled with VEX Robotics t-shirts. They're volunteers, they're coaches, event partners, they're top-notch individuals. And we're here to help you guys to educate the public about VEX Robotics and get people excited. So if you guys have ideas for future episodes, send us an email. You can reach us at theworldunvexed@gmail.com. And also, just a quick note here, this whole episode, what we're doing here is not sanctioned by the Robotics Education and Competition Foundation, nor is it sanctioned by VEX Robotics or IFI. We're just a group of passionate individuals that want to help the VEX Robotics community. So with that, we're going to jump into our very first segment, and it's called Referees Got Something to Say. So let's bring in a couple of amazing referees and VEX Robotics superstars, 2 Chainz.
Hey, yo!
All right, so welcome to John Queen and Clint Matlock. You guys are from Ohio, and you guys are going to be talking about the VEX Robotics official game manual updates and some Q&A. So I'm just going to let you guys take it away.
Awesome. Yep, John and I are from Ohio, and we are passionate about VEX here in Ohio. We're passionate about VEX everywhere, watching live stream, critiquing matches, keeping up with the game manual, as well as the official Q&A. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of the Q&A here, just to kind of bring coaches that need to know, or as well as students, what the official Q&A is. That can be found out at robotsevents.com, clicking on either the IQ or the VRC, and it will show you where the Q&A is. And what that is the continuation of the involvement of the game manual throughout the year. Couple things. That thing grows weekly with questions, and it's actually up to about 19 pages right now online. But this late in the season, there's just a couple things that I want to touch on. I know John's going to touch on some stuff tonight. But the 2 big things that I want to touch on is state championship. Somebody asked a question, state championship having colored string matching alliance colors on their strings, red and blue. GDC, Game Design Committee, has said that they're not going to require it. I personally think that they totally missed the boat on that. It would speed up the time in scoring matches. And I'm still not too certain that they're probably going to change it in the April update. The other thing that I want to touch on is somebody asked about roller mounts, and this is important. And this is great for students because this is a student-centered program. We always, as coaches and mentors, want students to advocate for themselves. Check the field. Not every place that you go is going to have the field set correctly. The game manual will tell you how to do that. Check the rollers. If there is an issue, bring it up to the head ref or the EP. You're allowed to do that, and you should do that, because at this point in the season, as you go to your state championships, it's going to matter. John?
Yeah, that's very important. I don't have a problem with you guys coming up to me and telling me there's an issue with the field. You're competing on the field. It's important to you guys that the field is set up correct. And every ref, every EP should make every attempt, and I know they will, to make it so it's workable. All the screws are in the roller mounts. Everything is correct because you've practiced and practiced, and now it's your big day, and the field's a little different. Well, we need to fix that. Now there is variances in the manual. We do understand that, but at the very least, yes, that's to you. The number one thing I want to talk about today is trapping or pinning. I don't know what pinning is because that's not a thing. It's called trapping. But trapping a robot. You guys all yell it out on the field, trapping, trapping, trapping. So the definition of trapping, to be trapped, you have to not have an avenue of escape. So if you are in the lane and you are shooting and someone is pushing you and you can't get to the basket and you're pushing back against them, they are not trapping you. You can just drive the other way. If you're in the low goal, I've had this question almost every tournament I'm at. The low goal barrier is an avenue of escape. If your robot can't drive over it, that doesn't make it not an avenue. You should build a robot that can drive over it. If you're at a roller and you yell out pinning and you're a red robot and I see the color on the roller is blue, I'm probably thinking you're there to spin the roller to your color. So I can't count a trap call until I know you're moving away. That brings me to this. So first I have to see where you're at. I have to think, well, what is he trying to do? I don't know what you're doing because I'm not doing it. When I look at the color, if it corresponds to your robot, then you're probably trying to leave. But if you yell trapping and hold your hands like this with your controller in and I'm not touching any controls, you're not being trapped. Because to be trapped, you have to be trying to escape. And if you're not driving your robot, you're not trying to escape. So those are the things that we go through our head as head refs before we start a trap call. So you make well, they trapped me for 8 seconds. You started it late. Well, I have to figure out all these things that happen. And if I see you not touching the roller, or if you're saying I'm trapped, but you're not physically moving the joysticks, then you're not trapped. That's probably one of my biggest things. That's the biggest calls we get. There's students yell. I, as a head ref, do not have a problem with you yelling it out. If you believe there's a violation and I may be focusing on another interaction between two robots, feel free to yell out trapping or get my attention. I will look at it. I have to make a decision, and I might have to go back to this call. If I have a good scorer who is certified, I don't have a problem with letting them making those calls and helping, because if I'm focused on an interaction, they can help with that interaction. So that's one of my biggest things. Trapping, it's called trapping. It's not pinning, but it's very important that teams understand this. The last part I'm going to put in this. If a team is trapping you and I start a five count and they back away a full square, they are now away and that trap is ended. Now they can't trap you again for another 5 seconds. But if you leave that and drive right up to them and smack into them, I can't have them go any further. I can't ask them. You can't chase them around the field so they stay a tile away. Effectively, the trap is ended, in my mind.
All right, guys. And as always, please make sure to read the game manual very carefully and be watching those official Q&A, because they do update, and mid-season here we're probably going to see a few more things get answered. That's going to help you guys out so much. So please know that we're not the official means of communication for any of these organizations. It's the official Q&A. It's the game manual. So follow those as written, not as you'd like them to be. So
That's a good
all
point.
right, thank you guys. We're going to move on to our next segment, which is called Pit Talk. And for this one, we're going to bring in a couple of Minnesota coaches, some of Minnesota's finest. So let's bring in Paula and Mark. So Paula Mortensen and Mark Zink. They're from southern Minnesota, and they've been involved with VEX Robotics for many years. They're going to chat with us about advice on how to work a tournament. So take it away, guys.
Hey, first, thanks for having us. Great job, Clint and John, going over some of those trapping things mid-season. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the qualifying rounds. I know we are mid-season, but I know from a coach's aspect, I coach middle school and high school, and one of the things that is always the goal from the very beginning of the year for your qualifying rounds is focusing on the auton. And every year there's a new win point, and the goal is always that teams can get a win point singly, then they've got other autons for half and half, and a good start. And so I know that we like to start those auton talks and make sure that they're working on those at least 2 weeks before a tournament. Sometimes you don't have time to get those autons done if you only have a couple weeks between tournaments, and your goal is to always be programming and driving the 2 weeks before a tournament. Doesn't always work out that way, but that definitely is something that our teams aspire to. One of the other things that I like to point out with my teams is I never want to see my team go up to the field and their alliance. If their alliance partner is able to do something, but they don't have an auton, the expectation in our program is that our kids can work with their programmer and teach them something, bring them along, and kind of work together to make sure that everybody is getting better. We only are kind of as strong as the weakest link. And so it's really fun to see when teams are helping other programmers, et cetera, learn some of those other skills. And then the other thing that I do want to talk about, because we are going into the end of the season and we've got regionals and state tournaments, I know that there are a lot of teams that haven't seen each other before or have not been able to compete against them. And so they don't really know what the other teams are capable of doing other than doing some of the scouting. And one of the things that burns teams a lot, and I say it's their own fault, is they'll meet with their alliance when they're scouting and say, hey, what can your autonomous do? Let's make some plans. And the other team is like, well, this is what our auton does, and this is what we can do. And the team say, oh, okay, and walk away. And then they get to the qualifying round and find out, well, they don't have an auton, or their auton isn't very consistent. And so, one of the things I like to teach my kids to do and make sure, say, that is wonderful. Let's go to the practice field and try it. Because I think it's good for the kids to understand that just because someone says something doesn't mean that they're always going to follow through, but just making sure the kids know that. And we talk about that before the competition. You always need proof of that and make sure that you are being respectful. And if the team doesn't have an auton, that's okay too. We were at that point sometimes as well, and sometimes that's really hard, but still to be encouraging to those other teams when you're talking about the beginning of auton and a qualifying round. So that was one of the things that I wanted to focus on, kind of new to a season, and then now going into the finals, making sure your teams know to double check and work with the other team.
Awesome, thanks, Paula. A couple things I want to focus on is when you're doing qualifying rounds, to also focus on your skills. Skills get you to your regionals and to your state championships. I was fortunate this year to take all 9 of my teams to our state championship here in Minnesota, which was quite impressive that way. But when I'm at tournaments too, I'm talking to other teams about making sure they're focusing on those as well. Sometimes getting a couple points in a programming skills gets you qualified for your state championship or your regional. And also could be part of the judging process. I mean, if you're going after an award that gets you to the world championships or the state championship, they're also part of that as well. The last tournament I was at that I ran the trailer for here in Minnesota, the judges told me that the Excellence Award came down to going through the notebook and actually finding that one of the teams missed a couple signatures on their pages, and that determined the final award there, just because they're looking for something to set the teams apart. So skills are a good key point, especially when you get to your regional state championship. And then when you're done with qualifying rounds, one of the things to focus on too is not always say, hey, I'm ranked number 1 or 2 or whatever, I should just pick the next team in line, because sometimes those rankings are kind of skewed a little bit depending on where they're at. I coach a bigger program, and so does Paula, and a lot of times our teams get partnered up with each other, or they face off against some of those teams. So sometimes one of our teams has taken a loss or two throughout the day. they might be a little lower ranked and, might be a better fit. So it's always looking for who that best opponent is. One of my big pet peeves is when I hear coaches say that, they should pick a same team in their program. And I never coach my teams to do that, because I think it's a good thing to find the right team to partner with to win the match. So, getting there and kind of looking through those rankings and having if you're not number one seed and you're picking that one prize team, you want to make sure that you have a multiple of options that you can go with and that you partner that complements your robot very well in a match. Not necessarily somebody that does the same thing. Like in this year's game, if you're both catapults, sometimes having a catapult up close and a flywheel from back in the other goal, you can shoot discs across and the other guy can clean up underneath. So it's always looking for that kind of that robot that complements you and will do well when you try to win a tournament.
I like what you said about that, Mark, because I think about when you're talking about the alliance selection and you're picking someone, there are sometimes teams that maybe get carried, or they're a little bit higher ranked, or maybe have a plan to ally with someone that is a little bit lower. And one of the things I think I've heard Zia say when she's, roughing out there and MCing, don't like to hear anything negative. And so I love it when the MCs and refs talk about, if you're one of those in the captain's seat and you get denied, just making sure that we're uplifting all those teams too. But it can happen that there are a lot of higher ranked teams choose someone that is a lot lower ranking just because of the strength of schedule. And so that is definitely something. I'm glad you pointed that out, Mark.
All right, thank you guys so much. Those skills are super important. It's a way to advertise to all of those other teams at an event. This is what I can do by myself. And that takes away all of the variations that can happen within the qualification rounds. It's your time to shine. That's a great way to say these are our strengths. We can get those discs in the high goal. We have an awesome autonomous, all those things that are critical. That's a great way to show off and say, hey, look, we're an awesome team. Thank you guys so much. We're going to scoot along to our next segment here, and we're going to bring in some experts in the area of judging. So this next segment is called You're Being Judged. So what do you do at a tournament? How do you go about impressing the judges? What are some do's and don'ts? Let's hear from some of our experts here. We're bringing in Todd Ablett, and we've got, I think Mark Zink is going to stay on with this one.
Hey guys, I'm going to talk a little bit of judging from how to set your kids up as a coach. I'm not necessarily speaking from the voice of a judge. We can do that another time. You did it at a great event this summer, Mall of America, that our host and some of the background people ran. Was an amazing event, so I want to try to go to that one too. I'm just going to give 3, but sort of have a 0. The 0 for all of this is you got to go to the judges and you got to encourage your kids to. They may not be ready and their robot's only a push bot. Well, when they're finally ready, they need to have maybe been to the judges once. So go to the judges, show what it can do, talk about the experience, and that'll make it a little better for the kids. So that's really item 0. And the simple, easy number 1 is make sure the kids introduce themselves to the judges. The judges could see anywhere between 5 to 40 robots in a day, maybe even more at a big tournament over a couple of days. That introduction really does matter, and it's just a good thing. And that's one of the things that teenagers might not be as up on. So go through that with them. Maybe have them do it to other people. And if you ever show anything in the room, get your kids working on it. That'll help them a lot. The other one's kind of a real specific thing. So I gave you sort of a general one at the beginning, but I'll give you a specific is if the kids are going to show them something, try to show them something that they did what I'd call some engineering or some science on. Well, we tried this, and we could fire 3 discs in there this fast, and then we kept improving it. And that's a great thing to show the judges, and show maybe something's in your book, and you can say, see, here's our whole test table where we did all this, and when we ran the gear ratio this, and then you're actually showing that you did some real science and some real science engineering. And that helps the judges a lot for a lot of different awards, not just one type of award, right? And I guess the 4th point I'll just fire out here real quick is something to encouraging to tell the kids is you can always remind them, nobody, absolutely no one on the entire planet knows more about their robot than they do. And that's pretty intimidating for a lot of kids. They know that some of these people are professional engineers and university students and alumni, and they know everything about yeah, but they don't know everything about your robot. So you're going to go and tell them what you know about your robot. So I think that's the big helps we can do there. Maybe you want to add to some of these, Mark?
Yeah, and I think one of the things too is you go into a tournament, I think you should look at what awards are being given out. And then also what awards are, qualifying you beyond that tournament, whether it's a state or regional or a world championships with those coming down the road. And really focusing what do you need to talk about on those. And they clarify the excellence award that you need to be, top in rankings for qualifications and top in skills. And so, understanding, how those awards are won and making sure that, like you mentioned, making sure you're introducing yourselves, having that ability to, talk about, know the names of all your components on your robot. The judges might not know if they're new to judging robotics, but talk intelligently about it so that, it's a seamless transition from one piece to the next. And really, it's like you said, they know everything about it. So talk passionately about it and everything. And I had a kid my first year, 11 years ago, that, we were able to sit in on the judging that first year here in Minnesota and to understand how to, coach the kids and stuff. And I walked out of there and I'm like, Nick, you sure sounded like you knew what you were talking about on that, and you haven't worked on the robot much. And he goes, yeah, but they don't know that. So I think it's a good thing to, be able to, everybody kind of have that role and understand, be part of it. And it is team centered and orientated that way. If it comes across like just Todd's working on the robot and Mark's not really doing anything, the judges are going to see that, and they're looking for that separation to kind of determine who are the top teams at a tournament. So,
yeah, I think that's really important, Mark, is that teams it should be, you should try to separate out a little bit. You maybe want 1%. You don't want to make it feel like the whole thing is pre-recorded and you've got everything to talk about. But if you can give your team some advice, if they start talking about the drivetrain and really the experts not taught, it's Mark, that Mark should be talking about the drivetrain. And I can just lean in, well, I think it's this, but you should ask Mark because he actually built that drivetrain, right? And so you can encourage your kids to kind of make sure that happens. And I'll tell you, as a person who's done a few judges and I've heard, we do not expect every kid to talk. If it's a 20-minute thing, it's never that long, but if it's 20 minutes, we don't expect 4 kids and everyone to have 5 minutes. We don't expect that. And if you're a quieter kid, we understand that, but you'll probably speak with the same amount of passion in your time. So you can encourage your teams that, yes, there's going to be someone that maybe speaks more and is the more gregarious person and will, but if their job is then to get the right person to talk, you can get everybody to talk, even though someone may not be totally comfortable with it. And the other thing I just thought I'd like to add as we're doing this is the thing this is amazing for, and some former students have been doing this about 20 years now, is, they come back and they say, all the judging I did and everything, it wasn't so far when I went to my first engineering interview for a job because I've kind of done this 100 times already. And instead of selling me instead of the robot, but it didn't feel all that different. So that's the other thing you can tell to encourage your kids is if they're going to any STEM field, they're probably going to face an interview at some point, and this is going to help prep them for that too. So it's kind of a neat way to accidentally giving them a pretty powerful life skill.
Exactly. Good points.
I love what you guys have had to say there. Those skills. Robotics isn't just about the technical skills. It's about those development of people. And if we can prep someone and they're better equipped to go into a job interview, oh my gosh, that's a huge victory right there. So I love the advice, the words that you guys had to share with us. Thank you so much. And we're going to move on to gameplay. This is the last segment of our show tonight, and we're going to bring everybody up here, and I'm going to put you guys on the spot, okay? What advice or what kind of thing should people be watching for? What kind of game strategies are going to be amazing? What's going to play out? Now, I'm going to kick one thing off I like talking about. It's kind of silly, but there are expecting robots out there. There are pregnant robots. Have you seen them? They have these little tiny motor robots. They're like yay big, and they've got maybe 2 motors and an umbilical that goes out of the robot for end game in order to get their maximum expansion, right? I just like to dub that as pregnant robots, right? And they got the umbilical cord, and I think it's just so much fun to see that. So, and it carries through. If we use that analogy, the gestational period for the robot is only, what is it, a minute and 50 seconds, right? Because you can't do it premature, right? You got to have it at that last 10 seconds in the end game. And so I saw this, I started emceeing that. Now I hope it becomes a thing that other people will talk about, the robots and the pregnant robots that are running around the field. So we'll kick it over to John next to talk about gameplay.
Yeah, gameplay. What I've noticed, I've seen a lot of matches. I've reffed a lot of matches, but I do a lot of homework. One thing about me, I will rewatch. I watch matches. I watch other live streams. I watch during the day at work. I just have a live stream on in the background. I watch some matches, see some interesting things. I like the teams are playing in other areas, so I can maybe get my reffing more polished. And the biggest thing I see is endgame. Endgame, yes, starts at 10 seconds. But teams, that doesn't mean that as soon as that buzzer goes off, you should shoot it. I've seen you're missing rollers, you're missing other things. The higher level teams now, they're letting you shoot, like bumping you as you're shooting, hoping you'll shoot out of the field. They're going to go and spin the last 2 rollers to them. Then they're up and they're going to shoot their end game, and they usually end up on top. My number one strategy would be for teams to just hold off a little bit on end game, try to save a roller, and then shoot your end game.
That's sound advice. Absolutely. Yep. And learn how to tie good knots. Like, check the scouting handbook. I was at an event one time, and the knot at the end of that nut that was being launched flew off. Like, it broke loose from it flew outside the field. Well, what is that?
It's a DQ.
That's a DQ.
Right on. All right, Clint, what do you got to say?
I'm just going to get quick and to the point here on the biggest thing as far as gameplay is communication between drive teams. John and I, a lot of times, will love to hear those students that will just shout out time, and John will sometimes try to shout louder than they do. But then there are other times that we just see teams that don't even communicate. And that is huge in doing is the communication between the drive team as well as the whole alliance. That's what I got.
Agreed 100%. You get in that tunnel vision as a driver, and you get focused on one thing, and you're not seeing the other opportunities around the field. So that's why you have a drive team and other people and other eyeballs on the field to see what's happening. That's sage advice. Yeah. Absolutely. Moving on to Mr. Mark Zink.
I think the one point to piggyback off of that too is when you're talking end game or that too, if you have, one person on each alliance or one, member up there on the drive team that's kind of keeping track of score, the kids get excited too when they want to fire that. And sometimes it's like, you don't even have to fire it. You've got the match won. You can clearly see that, that you've won the match. There's more disc in your basket, whatever. You have more rollers. Don't even fire it, because I've seen teams get disqualified. I saw 2 teams in finals do that, and they had the match won and they got disqualified for it. So just being, don't get too jitterish at the end and kind of go through that momentum and everything. And life's good.
Yep, that's good stuff. Something, a seed to plant. A lot of these end games are being launched with a single button. And if you're fumbling around that controller and just a single button press, that's all it takes to launch. Oh my gosh. Like, there are timers in the system, guys. Have your programmers check it, and you'll write code that says something like, if this much driver control has passed and the button is pressed, then launch it, guaranteeing that only in end game, is that can it actually be launched intentionally? There's still some of those, slip triggers, I guess, that just accidentally go off. The robot gets bounced or hit, something like that. But anyway, we're going to continue on. Todd, what have you got to say?
Well, I'm going to add a little one in before that is where I'm going to be interested to see over, especially the regionals and then on the worlds, is how much we're going to see. We got catapults versus shooters. And of course, everyone's seen the hybrid catapult shooters, right? Oh, okay. We're going to see some pretty interesting develop there. But really, what I'm going to go to what we've seen to be is expansion, and it's a big deal to me. I went and looked. So the matches I've watched and the matches I've done a little bit of math on, between 20 and 35%, and I obviously haven't looked at them all. I don't have that much time. Is 20 to 35% of the matches end in a DQ once you are in the playoffs, right? Once you're in elimination matches, that's a crazy number, and it's one bolt landing outside the field because he didn't tie the knot, or a robot facing in 100% the wrong direction and shooting all four strings beautifully into the crowd. I mean, it's a marvelous spread, but it's not the points you wanted. So my caution to team is a bit I'm sort of combining with a couple other people here, is the fact that if you don't need to shoot the damn thing, don't. And maybe to some of you, maybe you don't put a 20-foot string on it. I'm exaggerating, yes. But some of you, you don't need to cut it that close. You only need to get the edge of that last tile. You don't need to get the far side of the field. And it's sad to see a lot of teams it's a risk, and I understand it's risk versus reward, but you need to sometimes throttle back. And maybe even as we suggested, Andrew suggested there, a 1-point deployment. You might even have a side-to-side deployment, or even a far and a near deployment. If we're close, but we're just going to. And so I suspect we'll see that for sure in our regionals, and I really suspect we'll see some even more elaborates once we get to Worlds.
The thing that just floors me, what you said, is 20 to 35% ending in DQs, and that's during the eliminations, right? That's a crazy stat. It's a dangerous thing to be. It's not something you have great control over, right? They go where they're going to go based on where they're pointed, and the deflector bots are another one. The walls that come up and hug the string launchers. Those are cool to watch. Okay, Paula.
I just a lot of great points that everybody's brought up. Mark, I'm really not sure which match you're talking about in eliminations where it was a double DQ and had to go premature babies born. But I wonder, employing the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. I wonder how important that's going to be, just because we have seen so much of that end game. And it is really big about communication and knowing where your team is and your alliances and what's on the field. And so really teaching these kids to be sharp, but a lot of great points by everybody. It's been a lot of fun to hear what you guys have to say.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for giving your time and talents tonight. I hope this is useful for the greater VEX Robotics community. I want to give a shout out to the behind the scenes. Aaron Barker's been doing our video mixing here, and AKA Dr. VEX, right? He knows how to run this stuff for live stream. He's got all kinds of great ideas. So thank you, Aaron, for helping us out with that. If you guys have a comment or you'd like, and I got an idea for a future episode, you can, send us a message down below here in the comments. You can go ahead and send us an email at theworldunvexed@gmail.com. And then last thing I want to just say is, hey, teams, you're out there. You're doing a fantastic job. I wish you all the best of luck with the remaining VEX Robotics season. Also, I want to thank all the volunteers who inspire our youth to make VEX Robotics the greatest 2 minutes in robotics. Thank you all. Like and subscribe. And if you like what we're doing, give us some more ideas. Maybe you want to be on the show. So thank you all, and we'll see you in the future on UnVEXed.